Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Like, oh, I'm still your parent. You're still my kid.
Yeah. Well, and Tony talks about state changes, right? And I see a different person in my wife that I've been married to for 30 years, right? I see a different person when he comes to town and he's on his way to town, whatever, right? She goes back into mom mode.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's crazy, but it's cool. It's a neat thing.
It is. We all have that now, right? Yeah. It's pretty cool.
So tell us about working for Tony Robbins. I'm fascinated to know about this. How did you end up deciding to go to work with him?
So I had done all of his trainings, and there's a leadership track that you can go on, and then you can apply to be part of the leadership there. So I had done all that, and I was doing that. And this was pre-COVID, so all the events were still in person, and I was probably doing, I don't know, anywhere from 6 to 7 events a year. So every other month I was on the road traveling to wherever. Right. And then there's a point at which I was asked to join the team, right? And I welcomed it, and now he's paying for all my travel and my time, and I get to help people make the changes in their lives, which is so amazing, to see these transformations that are happening and to just be a little part of that, and so I welcomed the opportunity to do that, and that's what I've been doing for about the last 8 years with him.
Wow.
And
that's got to be incredibly special.
It is incredibly special. They just had UPW, which is Unleash the Power Within. And he did his first ever biggest virtual event, biggest UPW ever, 30,000 people online. Yeah. I mean, just watching the technology for all that was incredible.
Yeah. Well, this is typical Tony, right? COVID hits and he goes to Zoom. I think it was Zoom. Yeah. And he says, okay, I know that you've got a maximum of, I think it's 100 people or some crazy number. It's like really small, right? And he goes, can we take it to 100,000, right? And it's like, and to think the way that he thinks just boggles my mind. I mean, the guy just blows me away. It's like there's no limits to anything. There's no limits to his thinking. There's no limits to, okay, we're in this thing, right? We're in this massive pandemic and everybody's feeling like they've been absolutely just shut in and shut down and stomped on and living in fear and all that. Not Tony. No. Right? Tony just goes and figures out a way.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I had been so used to the in-person events. I was like, there's no way he's because they're very emotional. And the energy that you feel at those events is incredible because he's always playing great music and jumping up and down and always getting yourself in a really productive state. And, I thought, there's going to be something left on the table just to go online. And you know what? There's nothing left on the table. It is just as impactful online. Yeah. And it's really it blew me away to see somebody break through that, and just be like, no, I'm going to make it just as effective, just as impactful, and so it's really cool. And to, be surrounded with the people that are in that environment, I'm lovingly kicked up to another level when I slip back, and who doesn't want a peer group like that, to lovingly go, hey, I don't think this is the best you. It's really valuable to have people around you that know you, that can kick you in the butt when they need to, know, so
and you've got that every other month, right? Every other month you've got an opportunity to go plug into that energy and plug into that, it's love. I mean, really, it's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I think it's also what's made me, help me to understand there's no limits in my life, right? Other than my mindset, right? I can, and so it's really expanded that, and I hope my message to others has been that too, so
that's cool.
It's been really valuable.
So you read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And it has it sounds like a massive effect on you.
Yeah.
So once you read that book, you decide to flip a house. Walk us through that decision. Walk us through that.
Right. Well, there was a lot of education after the Rich Dad Poor Dad thing. And honestly, like I wasn't quite sure, it was real estate. I just started Googling passive income.
Yeah.
That's what I knew I wanted, because I had heard that people could live lives of, what they call mailbox money, money just coming into your accounts while you're off traveling the world or raising your kids or whatever it is you want to be doing, right?
Right.
And this was a myth I was following. And so I started Googling passive income, and there's a lot of things that come up. Royalties come up. There's a lot of things that come up, but real estate kept coming up, and it felt like something I could grasp, And so, but I didn't have any money and I didn't know how to make money, but I was a designer and I do have a good design sense. So the thought of flipping a house was like, oh, I could do that, and I hired a mentor because I was in the Robbins environment. They said, one of the principles they teach, you want to do something and you want to learn it fast, you hire a mentor and you get them to teach you how to do it. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what I did. I hired a mentor who taught me how to flip my first house, and he taught me really well. And I asked a lot of questions that after that first flip, I knew how to do it. Right. Yeah. And I could make chunks of money that way. And then I thought, well, I want to get rentals because that's my outcome, passive income. Right. I want to get rentals. And I didn't know how to do that. I think like a lot of people, they think, oh, I want to get something around the corner so I can keep my eye on it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I live in LA.
Right.
And the prices here are crazy.
Yeah.
And you really can't make cash flow off of them.
Right.
And I was going to all these real estate clubs and these real estate meetings, and I was meeting other investors. And I remember specifically what happened to me at one of the meetings. They had put us in groups to talk about real estate. And there I was, I had none, right? By the way, like I had no real estate. And I was in the group with a guy who had real estate in LA, another guy who had real estate out of state, and another guy who had real estate out of country.
Wow.
And I drove home from that meeting and I thought, how do you have real estate out of the country? Like, I mean, I just I couldn't even, figure out that concept. And then I was like, wow, this is all about risk. And it's about mitigating your own risk.
Right.
Like I'm risk averse to all of this stuff. And then I realized that I would have to invest in real estate outside of the state to actually make money and get that passive income that I was determined to get. And I'm like, all right, how do I mitigate that risk internally? Like, what is it I need to make me feel comfortable to be able to do that?
Right.
And I figured it out, like I need to know a team. I need to feel like I'm, making a good investment. So I kind of outlined that. And then I went and I started exploring different areas and how I was going to do that. And then I bought my first, but it took me a long time. It took me about, I don't know, it was probably about a year. And there was a guy at one of these real estate clubs that I'd always talked to, and because he had lots of real estate, right? And I would just always talk to him and find out more stories from him. And at one point he just turned to me and he's like, I've been watching you for a year and you haven't bought anything. Like, when are you going to move?
Yeah. What's holding you back? Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I want a date that you're going to have your first cash flow check.
Oh, I like this guy.
And I like
this guy.
right? And I'm like, an actual date?
Yeah.
Like, yes.
You want a commitment from me?
Right. And I kind of figured it out right there. And I'm like, okay, this is the date. And to be honest with you, he didn't track me at all, but I had committed. I had given him a date.
Yeah.
And I made that date. And then I called him and I'm like, I made the date.
Yeah. Well, he knew that you were making that promise to him and to you.
Yes.
Right. He knew psychologically that that was going to be something that would be the impetus for you to I mean, that's a goal, right? And a commitment.
And so I bought a house in Memphis, Tennessee, and I realized it wasn't as scary, like all the unknowns became knowns. And I was like, I can do this. I bought 4 more that year.
Wow.
Because I had gained some confidence.
Yeah.
I had, I was starting to experience, some confidence and higher beliefs in my ability to do it. Right. And so, I was exercising that faith muscle and I started really, really tracking it. So it was good.
So those 4, are they cash flowing?
Yeah, I don't have one of them, and I bought others since then. I have a small portfolio there that is cash flowing for me. Yeah.
Awesome. So you got your mailbox money.
I've got mailbox money. Yes, I do.
Beautiful. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you decide to start developing in Los Angeles. Take us through that mindset. What made you decide to do that?
That was great. Okay, so I was educating in LA and I was flipping and I was going through a really hard time securing homes because some of the Wall Street had come in and when they were buying up homes like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And so they
still are, by the way.
Yeah, they were outpricing all of us flippers and it was really a hard time. And to be honest, I was just craving like my girls. Like I was like, I want to be around other women in this industry. And I scheduled a Sunday brunch and I scheduled a bunch of women to come. And that was actually the beginning of Ren. And I said to them after our brunch, and they weren't all flippers, like some of them buy and hold, some of them were, storage units, some of them were in notes, all kinds of different women. And I said, I was thinking about doing this, quarterly. And they were like, no, let's do it every other month. And we started getting together and there was always wine involved. And, we were helping each other. We were sharing resources.
Wine, AKA the problem solving elixir, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And so we were, forming this little community, and I realized like I get to meet these women who I think are ballers, and there's all these other women that don't get to meet them because when you go to real estate clubs, it's dominated by males, and usually there's a man in the front of the room, and so you don't really get to meet the other women or see the other women in the front of the room. So I started the Women's Real Estate Network, and we started in LA, and then it grew, and I happened to go to one of our chapters in Seattle. And I was checking in on that chapter there, and the woman who spoke was a developer. And I went up to her afterwards and I said, wow, you're a developer. That is so cool. And she said, well, you're a flipper, right? And I said, yeah. And she goes, I used to be a flipper. Developing is so much easier. And it blew my mind.
Oh, really? Because everybody thinks it's more complicated.
Right. I said, what do you mean it's so much easier? She goes, there's a lot of pre-work. She's like, like doing all the pre-work and getting all the permitting and getting all that work done is a lot. But once you start building, you just build ground up and it's nothing. She goes, you know how it is when you're flipping, you open up a house and you never know what you're getting into. Like you
never know what's hidden in the walls or down below or right. Yeah.
You never know what you bought. Really, you really don't, right? It's true. And especially me, I tend to do a lot of hoarder houses, right? So like, after everything's cleaned out, you have no idea what's there. Right. But she opened up my eyes. That was the point. She opened up my eyes to me being able to be that, because I think I had always seen, first of all, no developer had ever told me, don't worry, it's easy. And no developer I had ever met was a woman. And so I came back to LA and I started seeing things differently. And sure enough, like when you start to see things, right? I met a woman who understood ground up construction more than I did. And we partnered together and we bought single families that were zoned for multi, and then we would knock them down and build fourplexes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And it was really great. And yeah, and that's the cool thing about having a network of women that are doing things, like you get to experience and identify with other people who are like you. I mean, I'm sure, Mike, just like you, like you've met people who are like, you identify with, that are doing something that you kind of want to do, and then they inspire you, and you're like, maybe I could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, there's a bunch of people that I've met that that are actually fit that bill, including yesterday, right? So you and I are talking, and you don't know this, but yesterday I was at a mastermind event, and when I walked in, the gentleman who invited me had been a guest on my podcast, right? And he and I had met at a networking event, an industry event. And I invited him on. He and I used to be competitors. So I'm in the flipping side of the business, right? And he worked for a flipper, I worked for a flipper, and we used to go back and forth. He would win sometimes, I would win sometimes, right? Well, he went out and started his own company. I went out and started my own company. And I invited him to come on the podcast because I truly, one of the most talented people I've ever met. And he's one of the nicest guys, really, Deborah, one of the nicest people you've ever met in your life. And so I invited him to come on the podcast. We had a great time, great interview. And afterwards I stayed in touch, and he reached out and said, hey, could we get together and sit and talk? So we got together and had a cup of coffee and talked for a few minutes. And then I told him, I said, listen, if I can ever help you, don't hesitate, reach out, right? So yesterday I go to this mastermind. I'm going there to learn, right? I'm going there to see what I can pick up. And I really wasn't going there to meet people or any of that kind of thing. I was just going to learn. I was just going to, because I'd never been to one of his masterminds before. And I kind of told myself I would when I could fit it in my schedule, right? So I go, and the first thing out of his mouth is, Mike, I'm so glad you're here. It'd be great to have your expertise. I'm like, dude, I'm here to learn from you. I'm not, right? I'm just here to be a sponge, right? Turned out I really was sort of the resident expert in the room. And so afterwards, there was a big crowd of people that came up to me that are fairly new in the business, fairly new investors, that kind of thing. They had a ton of questions. And I'm now going to other events because of that. But I met some women that are getting into investing. And they're kind of where you were when they were first getting started in the flipping side and that kind of thing. And they would be perfect for networking with you. I mean, they need your kind of collaboration. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, this is really cool. And the timing is just insane, right?
It's really cool. And it's so interesting, I think, sometimes to think about, hanging out with other flippers, because I do hang out with other flippers, right? And it's incredible, like, there's no competition. Like, we're like, oh, I have this problem. Oh, I had that problem. This is how you could fix that problem.
It's unbelievable what you pick up. I learned so much yesterday. I ended up doing a lot of the teaching, as it turned out, but I ended up learning a lot too. I mean, it's amazing.
Right.
And they tell you, if you want to master something, go teach it.
Right.
Right. And you're a living example
of collaborative atmosphere, right? When there's a collaborative atmosphere, nobody's egos are put out there. It's like, wow, this is fabulous. It's great learning and information. So
there's some real synergy there. I love what you're doing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
So anything you're working on for the future?
So I just opened a bed and breakfast in Puerto Rico. Want to talk about
that? Hey, my in-laws, my father-in-law will be happy to hear that. He's from Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So one of our women who I had been close to for a number of years during COVID, she's a short-term rental specialist here in LA. There was all kinds of problems with short-term rental. Sure. She just kind of was, and she was at this point in her life. She had gone through a divorce. Her kids were raised. She was like, you know what? I don't need to be living in LA. And she just dropped the mic and she moved to Puerto Rico. And I mean, just like anybody who moves to someplace tropical, I usually raise my hand and go, I want to visit.
Yeah. Can I come help you unpack?
Yeah. So I did. I raised my hand and I'm like, I want to come visit. And then I went and visited, and we ended up, because we're ridiculously real estate oriented, we ended up driving around the island looking at real estate, and she was telling me how real estate was done there. And then we met up other people. She ended up establishing a real estate club, the only one in Puerto Rico, called Rico. And we ended up partnering, her and I and another partner ended up partnering on this project. And so we just opened this bed and breakfast up in Miramar, which is in San Juan. And it's really cute. It's really fun. And so I go to Puerto Rico on a regular basis to check on that. And
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You gotta go check on it, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
I love it. That is so cool.
Yeah. So, and it's fun, to be able to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. What is there anything else you're working on?
I have a couple flips right now, and I have one that I think I'm going to hold, like I'm cherry picking. I ended up getting into a great deal in Carmel Valley, and another place that I don't mind visiting. So I might hold that. Yeah. So it's on an acre lot, and it's in this beautiful wooded area, and it's a multi-unit. So but small. It's got one unit that's a 2-2, and then a duplex that are both 1-1s. So there's a lot of issues with them. So I'm just now getting electricity to the duplex, but we'll get it all cleaned up, and the cottage is all ready for rent right now. So we're doing that, and I think we might keep that one.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So if somebody's interested, somebody's listening to this and they're interested in joining the Women's Real Estate Network, how do they go about doing that?
You could go to reninspires.com, WREN inspires.com, and look on our event calendar. We have usually a free event once a month. Okay. And it's just to get to know us, and we talk to people and see if it's a fit. And then we also have a paid event, and they're $25. I mean, they're not a lot. And we have those as well once a month. And you can just, if there's a subject matter, we have a different woman speak on a different subject every month. So this year we've had land, we've had flipping. This month is notes, so we have a different professional speak every month. And you can find out more about us there. And if you're just interested in reaching out to me, you can go to deborahrazo.com and schedule a time to call.
Beautiful. So we'll put a link to your website, and then also to reninspires.com. We'll put a link on your description for the episode.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Just click on it and get to you.
Yeah, that would be great.
I've thoroughly enjoyed our time together. Thank you again for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for me too. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Deborah. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.